All right. Happy Tuesday, everyone. And we are back with another Learning Tech Talks where we're exploring the landscape of, and Jeff and I just had this conversation, learning and honestly, workplace technology, because this is what's the difference anymore? Learning is work, work is learning. They're all in and of the same. So we're exploring a wide landscape. And today is a great example of that. So I'm joined by Jeff Rosick, and I got it first the right time too, from Descript, which if you're creating content today and you aren't at least familiar with Descript, you're going to want to tune into this one, because I will say I've used it myself for quite some time, and you're doing a lot of really cool stuff in the content creation space. So I think for learning and development professionals, content create, like how if you're dealing with content, which at this point is pretty much anybody, I feel like you should. So thanks for joining me this morning.
Oh, Christopher, thank you so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Thank you for the nice lead in on what we do here at Descript. But I also really love, I've been listening to your show, watching the videos. I really love the wide ranging conversations. I love to understand how people are learning and working and sharing content in the workplace. So well done.
Yeah. No, we're gonna have a good conversation. So to get things kicked off, though, just so people know, because people, I think for the most part, everybody knows where I am. If you aren't, this is probably like one of the first shows, because this background has not changed in years. Fred has been in that exact same position, over there, Fred the houseplant, for a bit. So I'm in Waukesha, Wisconsin. But for those of you joining, why don't you come in, let us know where you are today. But Jeff, for you, where are you? I know the answer to this, so spoiler alert, but I won't spoil it.
Well, sir, thank you. I'm in Boulder, Colorado. I have to mention to my fellow Midwesterner, I'm a very, very proud Ohio native. We'll try to weave that into the conversation as much as I can. And specifically, I'm in my home basement, and I've chosen a very austere background here. I've really enjoyed where you've talked about this with your past guests, and Christopher and I, we were just joking about keeping the backstage crew relatively quiet for the next hour. So I got a lot of crew here in the building, i.e. family, and they're awesome. They've adjusted seamlessly to this whole work from home, which I've been doing for a bunch of years now, all in Boulder, Colorado. So beautiful, sunny summer day. I've got the egress window here. It's not as beautiful of a terrain.
Not as beautiful as Taylor, but see, Taylor Blake, for those of you who have not seen the Learning episode, go back and look at Taylor's, because that was, even I was like, wait, that is your basement?
It gave me basement envy. It gave me egress window. It gave me terrarium, natural landscape envy. Well done.
I know.
And, but it is what it is. At least there's a window, and I got a little bit of sunlight coming down. So
there you go. There you go. Well, so let's just a little bit of background in terms of this, because we're talking about Descript and content creation, which, like I said, this is not going to be your usual content creation, because we're talking video, audio editing. There's a lot in here. But what is your how did you end up at Descript? Because you joined fairly recently.
Yeah, thanks for asking. I'm head of product marketing at Descript, and we'll talk a little bit about what I think that means, at least, which is to be the voice of our users, the voice of our customers who are creating content for a whole bunch of different reasons, which I really look forward to diving into. My background, I trained as a journalist long ago, and I did a little bit of magazine writing, and always like to think of myself in that storyteller mode. And anywhere I've worked in tech, a lot of different places, from huge companies, YouTube, where I just really dove back into video starting about 10 years ago, and startups alike. I also love working with startups. The common thread for me has been working with storytellers, working with people who have a message of any sort. I've worked at WordPress, which is one of the leading blogging platforms.
Yeah.
And but really,
you've been around the gamut in terms of kinds of content too, because you've got long form, short form, video. You got a whole array of things.
And video, to me, has been, in our time, Christopher, explosive. When I was at YouTube, it was the only video platform in town, really, from a kind of pure digital consumer and creator standpoint. And now here we are, where if you're a video creator, there are so many. I love video, and I love understanding how creators make their show, make their content, and put it wherever they can grow an audience. So to me, Descript launched. We'll talk more about what we do if it comes up naturally, but we have this origin in transcription editing of the audio. But around a year and a half ago, they launched a video editor before my time, and the video for that, produced by our partners at Sandwich Video, who are awesome to work with, by the way. it just brought to life the idea of this just very human component of what it takes to make video. Hopefully our software makes it a little easier, but that it's still embedded on our website at descript.com. You can see the video that drew me in over a year and a half ago. And I just joined about 4 months ago. So,
okay. Well, and I think, you know, the point you brought up, and I think this is where, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, but this is where, you know, I think people have been talking. It's always interesting because I've been following tech trends for a long time. And it's interesting how when they start, you know, there's always a little skepticism. People kind of jump on the bandwagon, jump off the bandwagon, and then it just finally reaches a tipping point. And I feel like video really, really, really hit its stride when the pandemic really started. And it was like people were longing for that ability to connect in a different way. And video does really allow, I mean, audio, I listen to a lot of podcasts, just podcasts, and it is great to listen to it. But even sometimes I'll watch the podcast version of video just because seeing people just adds another element of engagement.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, notably, there's a time and place for audio only, of course. Yep. And maybe that's we'll talk about this too. I'm sure we were talking backstage about the very human element of flipping a camera on. If that's the barrier, that's one reason to stick with audio only.
Yes.
But what video does, of course, it humanizes us. It reminds us that we're all sitting somewhere making the most of this last couple of years, or that we all have something to share, but that we have to go through this certain process to get ourselves camera ready so that we can be at our best, you know, when we're sharing with our audience.
Well, and that's why I think the whole like, well, which one's better? I'm like, there's not an answer to that question. It's the wrong question to be asking. It's, well, what are you trying to do? Where are you at? What are you comfortable with? How are you going to create the best content possible? Figure that out first. And then over time, it'll probably evolve. But we've been talking a lot about this. So Descript. All right. Well, I'll ask you the question I ask a lot of guests, which is, you're new to the company. It's summer in Colorado. There's probably barbecues or this and that. And you go, I'm the director of product marketing at Descript. When people go, what is that? Like, maybe they haven't heard of it. Maybe they all have out in Boulder. I don't know. But if they haven't, how do you describe it to people? Like, what do you tell people it is?
Well, I do first say it's a simple and powerful video editor, because you got to know which category we're in, and that's helpful. There's a lot of incredible video editors out there. But the unique thing about Descript is it helps you make video for your purpose, for your channels. It eliminates the really hard part of editing. And if you're like me and spent way too much time in the timeline as a very poor man's video editor, you know exactly what I mean. It can take
I know exactly what you mean. The timeline has literally discouraged more people than I know from getting involved in media editing than because they're just like, I can't deal with that. I honestly just don't know how to deal with that.
And this idea of editing audio, we have this really strong foundation in podcasting, and just we're all huge fans of podcasting. The idea that you can edit audio from a transcript that our software generates for you, that was breakthrough number one, in my opinion, as an outsider looking in and just being envious of the way that Descript now allowed people to create audio by editing words instead of editing audio in the timeline. There's still a ton of pro level tools. Audio files can get in there and edit with the highest caliber and fidelity. But at a really simple level, if you're editing a Word doc, you can now edit a podcast, and increasingly adding that same capability to video makers as well.
Well, and what's funny is, so to give a little backstory. So when I first discovered Descript, I actually found it for transcription. That was initially how I was introduced to it, because for anybody following, you know, kind of the trends and stuff, transcription has come a long, long, long way very quickly, thanks to machine learning. I mean, this used to be very difficult to get a transcript from stuff. You would have to wait. And that's how I was originally introduced to it. Was, this is a great way. I can put an audio file in here and within minutes get the full transcript, and not just like a terrible one that you're like, I'm going to spend more time editing this thing than anything else, but legitimately identified speakers, broke things out, had, you know, for the most part, got punctuation and everything, right? That was originally how I was introduced to it, because it's hard to sit and try and go back and listen to an hour-long something and try and find like, okay, where was that? I know I talked about this one thing. I don't remember where that was. That was originally how I was introduced to it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And a huge chunk of our customers started with just transcription. In other words, if you're creating an audio file or some other a video now effectively works just as well. Our
Yeah.
shout out to our awesome technical team. They're improving the transcription quality and accuracy. They've added 20 plus languages to multi-language transcription now too. It is still such a core part of how you want to create any piece of content, because then what flows from there is subtitles and captions, which makes your content more accessible. Or even in the pre-production or pre-publishing process allows you to search that transcript. And as you said, find the best parts that you want to focus in on from an editing standpoint, or even from a sharing and social standpoint. So it's amazing how fundamental the transcript is. And it's the exact same for audio.
No, it's huge. I mean, that was the foundation. I just remember being like, if I can find, because that was a challenge I was dealing with and not only just from learning tech talks, but even just as a learning professional, being like, we have a lot of this content, but so often it's locked in the black box of, well, there's this hour-long video. I'm sure there's something good in it somewhere, but I don't have time to sit and listen through and try and where was that? But I can scan a transcript very quickly and go, there it is. That 2 minutes is boom, spot on.
Yeah. And the other cool thing, if you're creating content in the workplace, you have several different starting points. And I think this is really important. If you're, I bet you've had to do this, Christopher. I know I have. You have to start with the script, and you're passing the script along to someone else that they're now going to create audio or video content. You could do that in our app. You could do it outside. You could do it in Google Docs. Our teams do a lot of both, but you can actually start with the written word and create a voice from that, or use it as kind of the scratch track and work from there. You can start with a video that you've made that's pretty rough, and you're going to chop it up and find the best parts of it. So it kind of enables you to work. And this is the beauty of being a student of video creators. You work all different ways. There's no right or wrong way to work. Yeah. You can really work from a video or from a script. You can be an editor. You can be an initiator. You know, that whole workflow thing is really, really important to accommodate.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and so, and I think again, and this is to your point, is there a right or wrong style? No, because for me, scripting, I can't stand scripting. Like, that's one of the things I like about the show. It's one of the reasons I stayed out of this content creation for so long was, I'm like, I'm never going to take time to sit and create an outline for a flow and sit in I'm like, forget it. I'll jump on a call like that and have a conversation. I'm not going to script it. But I think there's other situations and instances where you do need to do that. And it makes sense. Or some people are more comfortable going, I can't just wing it. And to your point, this allows you then to collaborate. So let's talk a little bit about this, because it got its start really, like I said, I remember recommending it to a lot of folks for transcription only initially. And then I saw it really, podcasting was kind of the big area that it was focused on, but it's evolved quite a bit since then. So like because we could sit and geek out on features like overdub and all this, but what's been kind of the journey of Descript and where it's gone?
Well, my answer to that is what drew me to the company. And first of all, shout out to podcast creators everywhere, because like bloggers, like the early creators of video and digital, when it was kind of a ghost town in the digital video realm, some podcasters have been at their craft for a very long time. And they have. Initially, I think just the idea of working with the transcript worked really well. But then increasingly, as you do with your show, Christopher, you have to take that content to wherever the audience is as you begin to develop an audience and think intentionally about, can I distribute this podcast -- 1 to 4 or 5 different leading podcast distribution channels? And long before I arrived, this company's been lucky enough to work with most or all of the leading podcast studios and learning from them about how they make their show and how they distribute some of the best shows in podcasting. And increasingly, if nothing else, you're going to try to promote your show, promote a great episode or a trailer or a highlight, quote, audio quote in social channels in an effort to bring your audience back to wherever you want your listeners listening to your podcast. And then video creators have to do the same thing. Increasingly, video creators are creating a podcast version because it's a great way to augment your initial type of content or just find new audience in some of the podcast channels. So we are kind of really of the belief that everyone is inherently a multi-format creator. I've been that way for years because I was a young journalist and I was drawn to email newsletters and podcasters and video in some order over the last 20 years. Easier said than done, though, because as you know better than most of us, this is the easy part. This is the fun part. We're making the content.
Oh yeah, hitting record and having the conversation. That's the part that everybody sees, that everybody goes, that looks like the fun. And it's like, well, yeah, that's the fun part. And then there's the whole, now what do I do with it? Where do I put it? How do I distribute it? How do I make sure people hear it? How do I make sure it's of sound quality? All this other stuff.
And this is true for audio and video. Like, video files happen to have higher overhead. The files are bigger. It takes longer to share them. It takes longer to download them, the whole deal. And so, our platform allows you to export your audio or video file. If you're going to take it somewhere else to finish up and edit, that's great. You don't want to disrupt the workflow of someone who's very busy creating content, but at the same time, that process should be really seamless. I think you've made it that way. It's helpful when this part's easy for the creator, when the actual content creation part comes easy to you, as it seems to for you. But everything that comes after that, from the editing to the sharing to the finding the social gems and so on, that's the part that is still quite a lot of work for creators. I don't care if you're a social creator on mobile first platforms, or if you're creating institutional content of the most precise order every day. That's the burden all creators share, is to just get that content out the door to the audience. And so we're working.
Well, there's a couple things you brought up in there that, I think it's really helpful to kind of hit on, because as I think of my primary audience, which would be the learning and development group, there's a lot of talk in the industry about we need to think and act more like marketing, which sometimes that's misinterpreted as like, so we need to brand more. And I'm like, well, I mean, branding is part of what marketing does, but that's a very small piece. And this whole audience development piece of who is your audience? How do you make them aware of what's even available to them? How do you then highlight and kind of nudge and drip content out to them? And I think that's one of the challenges, especially when you have macro content, where you go, we've got a big chunk of content, but nobody's really going to know what it is or what's in it or what they can access through that if we just put this in one place and go, this is where we have it, and we expect everyone to go to our destination to find it. If you do that, and I think a lot of times that's what's happened in L&D. Well, we created our content, we put it on the LMS, there we go. And it's like, no, we have to think about, how do you take those micro pieces? How do you distribute it out?
No question. I checked in with two awesome colleagues, Harmony and Kevin, who are our product experts, and they work with all of our awesome podcast studios and video production companies of various types, and huge companies and individual creators, and just check to make sure I know what I'm talking about here. And the one single thing that they told me yesterday when I checked back in with them before coming on the air with you is that idea of, even if you're creating, again, the most institutional content, or depending on the type of company you're in, and if the environment is great for creating video content, the one way that you do have to think like a marketer is to create content and take it to where the audience is. And so we're seeing in learning and training shorter, more episodic content, because that's even in the workplace, we're all still human beings, and you might have better engagement on learning content over a sequence or over a blended sequence, parts online, parts in person, shorter clips, even creating social clips that you share basically internally to remind people, hey, there's something of value in this course or in this training session or whatever it might be. And that, again, is exactly what you have in common with someone who's rolling up their audience across TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Netflix, whatever it might be, is that you have your core piece, but you've got to format even that in a way that's engaging to the audience, and then put it in all the right places for the audience to find it and engage it in the way that you hope they do. Yeah.
Well, and Boss brought this up in terms of, how to find different ways to do it. And I think this is one of the challenges sometimes, is going back to this point of, if you've been doing this, I mean, honestly, anybody in learning and development can relate to just the burden of content production. And honestly, this is one of the biggest challenges, I think, with stakeholders, is people are like, go make the training, go make that training video, go do that. And you're like, do you realize we've got to, maybe you go, well, that's only a 10-minute clip, right? But by the time we format it, lay it out, create it, edit it, post-product, figure out what to do with it, it becomes a lot of friction points for us. And I think that's one of the things where, if you're in L&D and you hear, okay, good grief, that sounds like a lot of work, maybe we have this macro piece of content, and you're suggesting all these clips that can be shared and things like that. That was one of the things that I found Descript to be extremely helpful of, because you really can scan. I mean, I look at an episode of Learning Tech Talks, just as an example. I can load one up, get the full transcript of it, and quickly scan through and find, ooh, you know what? That was a really good soundbite or talking point that I can pull from that at least helps people understand, oh, there's a knowledge nugget, but I may want to go back and catch more of that that maybe I didn't catch from the full discussion.
Yeah, I think that's the universal pain point or pursuit, which is the myth of the all-in-one tool that not only gets the whole process done, but as Boss commented there, helps you make great content, you know, not just get this done, but actually make it compelling in all the different formats that it needs to be, audio or video. And this is, again, this is one of those things that you see the most independent social creator, maybe a TikTok native who now is exporting their TikTok video to do other things with it, whether that's using TikTok's own sister product, CapCut, to add captions, or whether it's taken over to YouTube to begin finding a different audience on a kind of horizontal first platform like YouTube. Same thing if you're creating content inside a company. A few years ago, it was awesome just to do the desktop screen capture, short address, one take. That was novel. You and I were talking before the show. We both were kind of early pioneers of that in our respective companies. Now that that's caught on, it's not enough just to have the video on. You actually have to make it compelling. You have the same watch rate metrics in mind that a creator does. Did people watch this whole piece of content? And the ways you can do that are actually some of the ways that we're adding to our platform in real time too. Adding really compelling visuals to a video, for example. Adding captions just to make the important and emphatic highlights stand out visually. Translating it to multiple languages, and all these things that are just kind of core of making your content more engaging. I don't think, by the way, that there's any one tool that does everything, but I do think that, as Boss wrote, if there was, that would be the universal tool that solves it all. That's certainly one of our insights, is to try to put as much of the process into one platform as we can, while allowing, though, that creators are still going to take their content, their video or audio, wherever they need to finish it and then share it.
Well, and I think that point is a big one, because I think there's a lot of discussion in the space, and I don't think it's just limited to learning and workplace tech. I hear this in tech in general. You know, is it consolidating? Is it expanding? And my answer to that is yes. It's just like, yes, it is both. There are elements that are rapidly expanding and diversifying because of the specialty nuance. And that's where I think, you know, to this point of content creation, is there going to be a web app that's going to replace Adobe Audition, you know, or After Effects for video production? Probably not. If you're looking to do that level of high-end video production type work, you're probably still going to use a specialty tool that goes deep into that capability. Are you going to be able to, you know, has tech now democratized, even the example you gave? Let's say you have a video clip, you want to highlight something with, and see, I've even got the terms down, fancy captions, because maybe there's a statement that really jumps out that you want to pop on screen, or like you said, you want to translate it quickly into another language. Accessibility is becoming a big topic in the industry now. How do we make our content more accessible? And things like closed captioning, that used to be a lot of work. You'd have to take a video file, send it somewhere, get it transcribed, take that transcription, get it converted to, you know, a CV file. I mean, it was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to take it one step further, and hopefully this is useful to the audience, but you know, the common theme here is the burden you have in creating content is worth it. And it's shared by all types of content creators. If you think about a really specific example of a single episode of a training video, or of a sales update, or of, you know, a research highlight, or whatever it might be, the elements of that you share with, again, with the social content creator who's publishing a video on mobile every single day, is how to even make the best parts of it jump out. Fancy captions is a great example of that, but even just the social cut, the quick little highlight reel that you share out in all your social channels in an effort to bring someone back to where they can watch the full show. There's really tactical stuff that you can do too, even internally, like making that full transcript searchable, because you have to honor in an organization the fact that there's different modes of learning. Some people learn by watching. That's why you want to add as many visuals, upload a presentation to Descript, and then add voiceover to it, for example, or add visual callouts. But others learn by listening, and still others learn by reading. And so that's just one example of 3 different modes of learning. If you put all 3 versions of that internally, accessible and available and searchable, easier said than done, but you're accommodating 3 different, very important, probably the most fundamental modes of learning in today's workplace, for sure.
Well, and I think when you think about that, because you got to watch out, people in our industry will get all up in arms. You start talking about learning styles. But the point with it is, it's really about what are people doing and what's the best way for them to access it. And it goes back to this accessibility. There's times where I want, and it works for me to watch a video of something. There are times where I'm in an environment where that doesn't work. I can't. And it's much faster for me to scan quickly through a transcript and say, oh, you know what? And there's times legitimately I'll listen to an audio bite, maybe scan a transcript, and then go back and watch the video. And it's just like, well, it just depends on what I'm trying to do. And I think that ability to say, how can we create, and again, you look at Learning Tech Talks, people were like, are you going to create a podcast or are you going to do a live stream? And it was a yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to create and I'm going to make it accessible because people are where they are, and you just have to recognize you can't expect to try and demand they come and meet you on your terms. You have to meet them on theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, as a product marketer, shout out to any and all feedback about what modes of learning are in a company today. One of the cool things about this role, you should be interviewing real users, in this case, real people who are really creating content actively inside an organization or on their own for a company or whatever it might be. Best part of my role by far is to learn what's actually happening. I suspect, and your listeners and viewers will know this better than I do, I need to be doing this like every week, week in and week out right now, because the way that people learn and engage within a company seems to be changing very rapidly. I'm sure there's some fundamental elements to it that never change, but think about how much we've all adapted to over the last couple of years. So I personally love talking to anyone who's in this role of what we call a functional enabler. They're enabling learning, whatever their function might be inside a company, and just trying to learn how it's actually happening right now when time is always at a premium, when resources are scarce sometimes realistically. And going back to that first point, Christopher, when it can actually be hard to get your colleagues to appear voice only or on video, when you need that subject matter expert to come in and lead a talk or share or provide insight or do a training, that's still a little bit of a barrier to get people to turn the video on when that's maybe going to help the audience, but it's not always still, the most natural thing for participants to do.
No, it's not. And I think that's where the more we can do to make things easy and accessible, it just, there's a lot of noise. I mean, I talk to a lot of people from a lot of different orgs, and fatigue is real right now. I mean, there is so much noise. There is so much going on. People are expected to do so much. They are a lot of times just trying to separate the wheat from the chaff and just be like, I don't really even know what to pay attention to right now because I'm getting hit with so much. And I think that's where, to your point of, are things fundamentally changing? Yes and no. I mean, there are elements that at the core, the behaviors are very, very shared, yet you're recognizing this is a completely different environment. And I think that's where the expectation of what we need to do as learning professionals say, hey, I'm not saying what you used to do in terms of content was bad. No, but you need to now upgrade that skill set and say, okay, how do we make it faster in different mediums? How do we make it more accessible? How do we do all those things without going, well, now I've got to triple my budget and quadruple my timelines when we were already getting hard pressed for that before?
If I can, Christopher, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask your audience here, if you have anything to share, what has worked for you in creating content, making it engaging, as Boss asked a little bit ago or commented, what is actually working at getting the eyeballs, getting the viewership internally? If anything good pops up in the chat, let me know. 2 things I've learned.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was going to say definitely, folks, and I'll have a point of view on this, but definitely for those of you listening and watching, a lot of people like join and then they alt tab. So if you're alt tabbing and you're going, oh, hey, you know what? We've found a really successful way to engage folks.
Yeah.
Please chime in, but go ahead.
Share it. I'm always learning. And for me, the other two things I know from experience, my last 10 years, especially after I was at YouTube, I left to work on a startup that created content for businesses that were struggling to create and manage content. I mean, it's, again, a universal challenge. It was 7 years ago. It still is today. I don't care if you're a content marketing team and you're creating content for advertising and for social engagement, or again, if you're a learning and training team, or if you're an investor relations team. I mean, creating and managing the content continues to be a universal challenge. One thing I learned supporting companies huge and small, there's no one unified way that video is made internally, for example. I've seen it all. I've seen it from the one person wrecking crew that just somehow seems to have more energy and more hours in her day and gets all the people rounded up and does the production things that you and I would consider pre-production, production, chooses the software they're going to use, does the training, maybe writes the script, maybe goes through the rough recording and finds the best parts, maybe does the editing in some cases because the tools have improved so much there, and then certainly distributes that content everywhere internally, or in the cases of content marketing teams, externally. That person is a unicorn. Please don't go out trying to hire that person.
Yeah, I know, right? That's the danger. And I think sometimes L&D teams do that is, you're looking for this job description of, can we want the person that does all this? It's like, well,
L&D especially, because there have been this unicorn so many times that I've seen, even in my relatively short time of trying to work with learning content creators, is there are some rare souls out there who are really adept at doing this. Part of it is tool selection. Part of it is just sheer force of will and wanting to be the one that brings audio and then video into a company.
Some of it is perfectionism. If we're just being honest, sometimes
we all have the same number of hours in the day, so it's just a sacrifice of something else. Content marketing, it's a little different in some ways. You can hire an agency, you can hire individual contributors and contractors, and you can hire a video editor internally or partnered. We have an awesome content marketing team here that creates so much incredible content. It's one of the best I've ever been around. But again, I've even seen that part of the house organized so differently. There's no right or wrong way. It's you just set it up in the way that ultimately works for your organization.
Well, and what's interesting is I think this has been, in some ways, this has been an opportunity area for learning and development. And I think some of the challenges have been, and this is something that I've tried to do within my orgs, is a lot of times learning is painted with one broad brush stroke. It's like, oh, you're a learning person, so you're good at all of it. And while I think most folks, if you ask them, would probably, oh yeah, no, I can. But if you're really honest, most of us, it's like, well, maybe I'm more comfortable in this, or I'm more comfortable in that, or I really don't like this whole side of things. And I think that's where this opportunity we're talking about of almost this content strategy component is there's not always a lot of content strategy behind things. It's well, we're creating things because somebody needed it, and then we got to get it somewhere and get it out, versus really being strategic around what content do we need? What medium should we deliver it in? How do we reach our audience? How are we nurturing that audience and growing it? That's not necessarily always something that we've either had the skills internally to do, or really even the appetite, because that's just not the way we've operated. And that's changing.
Well, I'd offer to share up a real quick content strategy for the audience if that would be helpful. But if you interacted with me at YouTube 5 to 9 years ago, this might sound familiar. We call it the Help Hub Hero, or Hero Hub Help Framework. And this, I think, works for content marketers as well as it works internally. The foundation layer is help content. Anything you need to do to get the audience what they need. Typically, what's the audience? What's your colleague asking as they onboard, as they join your company, or as they train on a new product or a new service? So today those are really short kind of how-to videos in most cases. Like, how do I learn this software? How do I access this internal platform, or whatever it might be? That's help content. That's the stuff you have to have. Okay. The other end of it, Hero, that's the big moment. That's the annual, sales conference type preparatory video that everyone spends a lot of time and effort preparing, or the big announcement, or the big training series that everyone's required to complete. In marketing, it's the big ad that's going to go out to millions and millions of viewers. That's the hero end, or the big event that you're going to produce.
Yep.
The middle layer, the hub layer, and this is where I find a lot of learning content creators are way better than they ever give themselves credit for creating. Hub content is stuff that you do regularly to engage your internal audience. So it's one thing to put a training series out week over week because you have to, but it's another way to do that in a compelling way that actually gets your colleagues interested to attend that required training. Or if you're a sales leader, you have to do the weekly sales update, but you can bring that to life in a really fun way, and you can show visuals of who bought and what that company, what that customer makes, or whatever it might be. So regularly, kind of regularly programmed content. Again, that's something that podcasters have to think of too, is what's my show that I'm publishing out every week or twice a month or whatever it might be. And I found back in the day, we found that was really more the domain of, professional content creators who are making marketing content. Today, it is very much the domain of workplace content creators too, because again, fundamentally, the internal audience is a human being. And we finally admitted that sometime over the last 5 years.
Isn't it interesting, though, that I think that is something that has been forgotten in many regards, is that, these audiences, right, it sounds very ethereal. Audience, the workforce. We use these big words to describe folks that don't really necessarily make it feel super personal. And in reality, going back to examples of things that have really worked well in terms of differentiating content, when it feels like, whoa, this is speaking to me on a human level, that's the kind of stuff that pulls people in, because they go, this connects with me as a person, as an individual. I feel connected to whatever this is. And there's a lot of different ways you can do it. But that to me has really been the piece. If it feels scripted, cold, just kind of like, yeah, this is just something else, which I think, there's been a shift in the corporate sector of, it used to be formal talking head type of a thing, but that had that kind of cold, disconnected feel. And I think when you see those raw, authentic conversations, that just really seems to draw people in far better than other methods.
Yeah, love your audience above all. I mean, that's the commonality for all creators. For someone like me, Christopher, it means I have to edit myself a bit more before I go on the air, so I'm not going on for too long. I need tools. We've got this tool, filler word removal. I need that for myself usually, because I often just end up with this mishmashy word soup. But if I love my audience, I'm remembering less is more in a lot of cases. Deliver the message in the amount of time that they actually have for it.
What's funny? So the filler tools, so just kind of on a side note on this, because there's another piece I want to talk to, because I'm really interested in kind of the response from users on this one. But before I do, the filler tool. So that, and again, even from a professional development standpoint, I know when I was early in creating the show, I would actually reread through all my transcripts just to see, how am I engaging? Again, I use the filler word thing to see, do I say, like, words like that, and where are they? And it actually was really helpful to be able to go through and go, oh, okay, here's an area I can grow in terms of the way I deliver messages or things like that. And some of those things may feel really small. And sometimes I've seen people avoid creating content because they know that they do that. And I will say, for those of you who haven't seen it, I mean, I'll pull it up on screen just really quick. When we joked about the fact that it's like editing a Word doc, and Judy, if you're watching, I just happened to pull yours up from the other week. But I mean, legitimately, it's as easy as editing a Word doc. If you're editing video, and I've done this before, like, I don't want to hit delete, but if I hit delete, it literally snips that part of the video out. And I've gone through and gone, that word isn't the right word, and deleted it. Now, granted, most of what I publish, because I like just the raw live thing, I'm like, well, it is what it is. So it's going out the way it is. But when I've done more intentional content, or I've encouraged my teams, we've used this to actually go through and say, let's cut out some of these filler sentences that aren't really adding value because they're fluff.
This script is thanks for sharing this, by the way. It's really awesome on a couple levels. One is that really simple tactical level, the feature filler word removal. If you use that feature on me, you might trim 5 minutes off this episode for all of my and awkward pauses. But that's one. And then just being able to do this visually, maybe reorganize part of the talk. Some podcast editors, video editors, really, they take some liberties and they rearrange the order of the discussion. And that, that's part of post-production. And then lastly, there's some other really fascinating things that happens with that transcript. Some of our users will still export the whole transcript over to a Google Word doc and collaborate in there because that's so ingrained in our culture. And it was at Google, and it is in many other organizations or whatever other text collaboration tool you use. We're working very hard, as we should, of course, to make collaboration in the product work really well. You could have multiple people in there actually editing or commenting on the script. But the point being, you can do that as your own labor of love. If you're part of a team, you might be obligated to share that script. You might have to get approvals on it. I've been in that boat.
I know. There's times legal, somebody's involved, and before something can go out, somebody needs to do it. And I think going back to your point of what we talked about earlier, reducing friction, when you think about it, that's always historically been done in a text document. And that's always been a barrier, is then we have these video or audio components and we're stuck going, okay, we need to collaborate around this, but it's not in a medium we typically collaborate. And so you end up with this bouncing back and forth, trying to get it right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you're a one-person team, or if you are part of a huge company and have therefore more overhead, more steps that you have to get through to get your video or your audio published, you're not alone. That's probably the reassuring part that I can offer. But I'm very interested in this idea of reducing friction we talked about before we started, Christopher. I mean, I love to learn how people do that. I love to learn what the hacks are. Even just sharing files around. If you have to export your video and then go put it in a Google Drive so that it can be shared and reviewed. Now, today, there's a lot better ways to do that, including our share feature, but companies use all different types. That's just one example of a step in the process. If you're not the one making the video, you fail to appreciate how long it takes to download the video from whatever platform you've created.
From some shared site, loaded somewhere. I mean, it's a lot.
Put it somewhere else. Put it in the editor, export it back out. And again, as much as we can streamline that, we just launched it. You have a horror story there? Is that what you're about to share?
No, I just laugh about it because this is the kind of stuff that people don't realize goes into content production. And if you haven't been in the weeds, something that sounds, in learning and development, I just think back to my days when I was doing more of the raw content creation where, it was like, we have a few more edits. And you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to go back. I've got to download the raw file. I've got to move it over here. I've got to edit it. Then I've got to republish and I've got to reproduce. I mean, and you start dealing with video and things like that. The rendering alone of something you can spend the better part of your day just doing nothing but moving things around.
I have to share this mannerism because it's what you're doing when you're waiting for the video to move around.
Because your computer is just stuck. It's like overheating as you're like, well, I might as well go do something else.
Well, and it's up to us. I'll make a quick plug here for a very recently launched feature called Edit and Descript. But if you're using a Restream to capture content, you had a guest from Restream on a couple of weeks back. She was awesome. If you're using a Squadcast or a Riverside to create podcast content, if you're hosting it in a Captivate and need to edit an episode, we've just launched a feature where from each of those platforms, you can edit in Descript. You can click a little icon in the platform, bring it back over in Descript. It just automates this workflow. And so it makes it so that you're not the one dragging and dropping files around. When I interview our users, it's amazing how frequently that comes up as one. It's a content.
It seems like a small thing, but it's not.
It's a massive one.
It's not.
And then the parts you really want to be collaborating on are the script, the words. That part is worth it because you have to make sure, especially depending on what function you're in, the accuracy and the precision of product terminology you're using, if it's training or whatever it might be.
Yeah, those
parts are worth the effort to make sure that the script itself is accurate and does its job.
Yeah,
but the other parts around it are the
and that's just it. And that's where I think unless you've really been in the content production piece, some of these things just can be taken for granted. They really can be taken for granted. And something as simple as, oh, can't you just download another, Boss commented on exporting I mean, even exporting stuff, you export it out and you're like, oh, click, click, click,
Yeah.
click. And you're like, good. So let me ask you this, because there's one feature, and I'm curious, because again, this may sound, and this is where kudos to the engineering team over there, because as we talk about this, I don't always think, similar to how people don't realize what goes into content, I don't think people always realize the tech horsepower that goes into some of this stuff. Like even the transcription, we take that for granted now, that you can pop an hour-long video file and 3 minutes later have a full transcript with speaker identification and go, oh yeah, that's just what happens. And it's like, do you know what kind of programming and machine learning went into training that algorithm to be able to do that with the precision that it did? So one of the features I'm curious about, though, because I started playing around a lot more with what's the AI voice? Overdub. Okay, so for those of you who aren't familiar, there's a feature in here called Overdub where you can train the AI to make your voice. I mean, and I have an AI version of my voice where I can type and it sounds just like me. It sounds like I'm talking, and I like it. But it also, there's elements of it, and I think my brother and I were talking about this the other day, and he's probably listening, so he's probably going to get a kick out of this. But we were talking about, there's kind of a creepy factor a little bit with this, that you can create an AI machine to speak, and literally I can type up a paragraph and say overdub, and it will make me say whatever I typed, and I can now output that as an audio. I'm curious the response from folks, because there's legitimate conveniences when you go, oh shoot, that's not the right word I wanted to say, type of a thing. And then there's also, I'm sure there's the doomsday people that are like, oh man, you can create all sorts of horrible things with deep fake type stuff.
Yeah. Well, a couple things about it. It's definitely one of the most powerful features we have, and shout out to the machine learning technical team that we have all over North America and Montreal and in the Bay Area and elsewhere where that team works. They do incredible work. They're making it better all the time. As I mentioned earlier, just the act of transcription accuracy is really the most important, fundamental of it. But then on the fun side of it, but incredibly useful side of it too, it allows you to create a version of your voice. The process for it, it's not that it hasn't led to some fun social moments out there where when people for the first time realize they're listening to an AI generated voice, that
it sounds exactly like you. I mean, you cannot tell the difference.
Absolutely. And that's a topic in the social realm today. By the way, Marilyn, our awesome creator evangelist, our creator liaison, she tells me that social creators love talking about AI and all the ways it's used and can be powerful, from removing a green screen to generating a voice. There's some huge watch outs there. And as a company, we have to be careful to have the right protections in place, which we do as you go.
I know. You've got to sit and verbally. And I mean, there's a whole lot of checkpoints to make sure I don't create a version of you and then start producing content with your voice associated with it.
But it is a topic in society, rightfully, that we owe it to do it the right way and to make sure that it's being used by the person creating their voice. The way it works is unbelievable. With, I think it's 8 or 10 minutes minimum of your own spoken dialogue, you can begin to,
much.
And if you add 30 or 45 minutes, it just gets more and more accurate. But the really cool thing about it, there's the fun and the novel aspect of it, to be sure. And if you just think about what you can create with combinations of overdub and captions in terms of social content, you can really do some powerful things. There's social modes where it's better not to have sound at all, and that's where captions come into play. But there's others where it's really cool to be able to scale your voice in some fun directions in the consumer world. But for businesses, I think one of the cool things it allows is, we were talking about earlier, the different ways that people work. Some people might start a project with a script that they've written, and others might start with a video or a screencast that they've created, or still others might start with a presentation. But if you're that type that wants to start with a written script, you can now use Overdub to create a rough track or a scratch track. And then from there, before you take the time to record a final version, or before you enlist the person whose job it is to provide the final voiceover, and this is true for podcasting studios too, you can have this scratch track that everyone can hear what the show
They
is
can
going
start
to
to
sound
put
like.
themselves in.
So it's, I mean, it's unbelievable because it's really a functional feature, overdub, but
No,
but
well, and I think that's where sometimes you see either one, it gets dismissed as not a big deal, or two, it's post-apocalyptic. We're going to live in a world where we can't distinguish, whether Christopher Lind actually exists as a person or if he's a hologram that's been sitting in that chair for, whatever type of a thing. And I feel like there's so much middle ground that gets missed when we jump to these polar ends, because even, I think from the learning and development space, learning and development produces a lot of content. And a lot of times voice is one of the most challenging pieces to get right, because you go, well, where are we going to get a voice? Then we're waiting on availability of all this type of thing. And to your point, the ability to say, well, what if that wasn't a barrier? What if, and AI voices used to, it was obvious you were listening to a robot.
right.
They've come along a long, long way. But I even just think, in terms of content barriers, sometimes people have avoided content because I screwed up this one word in this thing. And now I've got to start over. And things like overdub can allow you to say, no, you don't. Just select, type the word you actually meant to say, and hit return, and you're done. And that's it.
It's easy for us to think, well, my microphone's always on, I can just go re-record that part. But that's not true in so many workplaces where it takes a lot of work to get set up.
It does.
And if you got feedback on this one sentence that you have to fix, or say the word correctly, or whatever it might be, it is very powerful to just go back through and use overdub to create to fix a word or a phrase. But then on this other idea of if you're working from a standpoint where the script needs to be very accurate, you get into where that could really matter too, because you can already replace part of a script. There's a feature, it's a hidden feature for Descript users. It shouldn't be hidden. We're bringing it more to the forefront as we.
It's like one of those off the menu, like if you go to In-N-Out and
well, we
order
just
animal fries.
But increasingly, if you select a bunch of text and right-click Paste Special, replace script track, you can actually replace a previous chunk of text with an updated chunk of text, and you could use overdub to fill in new audio for that too. So just the different workflows that this sort of thing allows, out of respect for, I think one of those couple universal things is how much in a time crunch we all are as we're doing our jobs. Anything we can do to save time and remove the pain of creating content so you can focus on the good parts. That's kind of what it's all about.
Well, and I think it goes back to that point of reducing friction. And again, sometimes, you mentioned this, and this is how things can happen. And I've seen it derail the best creators, where, to your point, oh, well, my mic's always on, it's not a big deal. Right. But you've got to make sure you've now gone back. You've got to return. You've got to record. You've got to get it right. You're probably going to screw it up a few tracks anyway. You're going to then have to export, publish, and and by the time you've gone through all these steps, you go, you know what? The better half of my day has now been scooped up in what I thought was going to be 2 minutes of actual recording. And you go, well, yeah, it was only 2 minutes of actual recording, but it was 4.5 hours of just administrative nonsense, when you could have just clicked, changed the word, and hit enter, and you've solved your problem. Right? I think that stuff cannot be taken for granted. And
I'm sure it's different for all of us. I'd love to hear what people's most painful part of the process might be. It might be different for all of us. For me, even though I've been on video a lot the last 5 years, I was still playing around with my little humble home setup here before jumping out with Christopher. I had a light. It was casting a bad shadow. So now I've sacrificed visibility on one hat. Whatever, who cares? No one's watching. No one's here to watch my face at this point. It's the discussion that we're here for. But that's what's human about it. We're doing mic checks with each other because we care that the audience can hear what we're talking about. To me, that is not the painful part, though. The painful part for me is if I have to get a video made, one of these help videos, let's say, it means for me a lot of time in the timeline. I'm not good in the timeline, no matter what program I'm using. What I can do in 6 hours, someone else can do in an hour or two. A real video editor who are worth their weight in gold, by the way, as most of us know. Or you have to do an end-around video editing and make it so. And I think that's what's brilliant about your show here, the format of it. You could edit this. I don't know if you do. Do you edit the show after we're done talking, or do you kind of post it as is for the most part? You showed us a little
No,
bit.
for the most part, it's posted as is, just because it's me. It's
Yeah.
me. I don't have the luxury of a post-production team.
Yeah. And if you structure your content that way, if you program the show that way, it makes it a little easier to spend less time in post-production too, among other things. So
yeah,
I love to
no, but I mean, going back to your point of, and I won't get your legal teams all up in arms, but I am gonna nudge you on what we can expect coming, because that is a teaser. But to the point, I've been able to leverage more of my content because of tools that have, and Descript's one of them, because being able to produce an audiogram quickly by going through, finding a part of the transcript and quickly publishing it out as an audiogram, or there was this really great part of the discussion that I know somebody else in the industry is currently struggling with, and I can quick snip and export a video clip and go, here's that component of the discussion that I think will be most helpful for you. You can go watch the whole episode if you want, but this is the part that's, I think, most relevant. That kind of stuff. There's just no way I could have ever done that without modern tech, because it'd just be like, I don't have time to sit and think back to every conversation I've had and what minute and second things are happening. I just can't.
Yeah. Well, that's the lead into, and I appreciate the tee up there.
Yeah, no, I know. I won't make you spoil too much.
No,
but
okay.
What's coming?
What you just said is a pain point. It's almost, again, I think you've structured the show here so that you can be prolific with it, which you are. You're going to post approximately an hour-long episode of us talking. And someone could listen to this in the background. That's often what happens with a YouTube video. And it's perfect. They can watch us at the beginning. Who are these two people? When you're going to share your screen, they can, change their screen around and go watch that part. That's beautiful. It's almost harder, as we know, to create a much shorter piece of content, especially video, especially visual. So as text is to audio, and if you ask the person editing the teaser for a podcast episode, it probably takes just as much time to episode the teaser of a minute or 30 seconds.
Oh, I have no doubt.
In some cases, it depends how much of an audio file, how much sound quality correction is happening with the full length episode. That can be quite time consuming too. But to video, it's the same idea. It's how do I make the visual of this more compelling, whether it's 1 minute, 8 minutes, or 57 minutes and counting. And so what we realized is, and again, this all happened before my time, but I saw the vision and I wanted to be part of it.
Yeah.
The transcript is still at the basis, whether it's audio or video. There's so much you can do around the spoken word. And in most cases, video creators are hooking their visuals on to some component of the dialogue. That applies in a whole lot of video types, from like how-to and explainer type videos to presentations to narrative or commentary type videos on social channels. So what we're teasing tomorrow, and the plug will be, go to Descript.com, sign up for our season 3 live cast tomorrow. We're going to be introducing our next release, which is called Storyboard, the storyboard release for Descript. And you probably get a pretty good idea. The idea is to help you arrange your visuals as easily as you can currently arrange the audio using the text. So we're introducing a heck of a lot of video features, especially something that gets you close to this idea of a storyboard for arranging all the videos for every scene of your video. The intro. What's that intro going to look like? You've got a great intro for your show here. How do you make that part repeatable and reproducible? And then how do you make a transition if you're going from two people talking to B-roll or something visual? And so this idea that video is made up of scenes, and that you have a visual component often that goes along with these scenes, that's a lot of what we're going to preview tomorrow, and give users an opportunity to request early access to it before we launch it to all users. Have to say, audio's only getting better at every point too. For podcast creators, that's not going anywhere. There's such a strong set of podcast creators using the platform. It won't go away. In fact, it should make it easier to create video versions.
Yeah, if anything, it should make it easier. And I think that's just it. Is there's such a blend, there's such an overlap between the two. They aren't really in conflict with one another. They really work symbiotically in terms of how those two. So that's, and again, one of the things that most excites me about some of these things is if you read any industry trend thing right now, the expectation that everyone in some capacity needs to be creating content to be successful in their career, I mean, it's just becoming an expectation that you know how to, and that it doesn't mean everybody has to have a podcast and know how to do video production. That's not the point. But there is almost a growing expectation that you know how to produce content in some capability, which is just exciting because that has been terrifying for some folks. And I think technology is making that so much easier. Your point of the timeline. There's a lot of people I know that would just go, timeline?
Yeah.
But I can edit a text document. I mean, the Mavis Beacon post got a lot of engagement because I think everybody went back to, oh yeah, right. I mean, we've been doing that for as long as we can remember.
Yeah. We all have to work with text. We all have to work with, many of us have to work with slides. And so as much as we can do to make that easier for these multi-format creators, as we call them, even if you're, writing emails and then shifting over to video mode, that's a pretty big cognitive leap. But certainly if you're already thinking about how to take your internal communication from deck to audio to video to live, whatever it might be. And Christopher, this is why I love to be in the presence of a prolific content creator. Before we started, I had to ask you questions about your setup and how you do it. It's just, my job's never done. This is the journalist in me. I always want to be learning how creators do their thing. And I love seeing how you do it, and just love to observe and have this discussion with you.
Well, I'm so glad you made the time, and it sounds like your crew did a great job of, keeping their bunny slippers on and not stomping around the house too much. I think mine did as well. So I want to thank you for joining. Thanks for a little bit of the early reveal. And again, for everybody out there, content creation is not going anywhere. Even as we talk about moving into the experience age and immersive tech is coming and it's here and all this good stuff, there's content's not going anywhere. And we still need to be thinking about how can we do things differently, better, and more efficiently. So I appreciate you just sharing some of the insights and wisdom on content strategy as well. So thank you so much, Jeff.
Anytime, my friend. And everyone, keep up the great work. You are the audience we love. And I'd love to rejoin and talk with you anytime, Christopher. Thanks for having me.
Sounds like a plan. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next week.